Good morning. My name is Jawad Ahmed Fareed, and today we're going to spend some time discussing pitching lessons. So, the first question that we should start off our discussion with is what defines a great pitch? If you look at a series or a sequence of pitches, what are some common attributes that would allow you to say, wow, this was a really good, solid pitch. This moved me. Right? In my mind, and I think if I look at my experience over the last couple of decades, in my mind, I think a great pitch is always based on a true story that connects. So take a look at this gentleman, right? And tell me what you see. Look at the depth of his eyes, the lines on his face, the whites in his hair, the character in this image. What are some of the common words? What are your first reactions? If I were to ask you to describe him in a single word, what would that word be? Over the years, as I've shown this image to audiences in my classes, some of the common themes that have bounced back from them have included words such as character, fairness, life, want, need, poverty, hard work, and honesty. And all of these are great starting points for weaving a story around this image, as long as you understood the context and the background and the situation in which this image was shot. So if I were to tell you, I met him early in the morning, just after sunrise, around 6 a.m., on a hilly track outside the Sugar Serena Hotel, right next to a river. And he was walking upstream and I was walking downhill. And I asked him, can I take a picture of you? And he said, yes, right? So that's a story. It's not a pitch, it's a true story, right? So how do you convert? How do you weave? How do you take this out? Yeah. But does what? Does it do anything more? Yes. It connects across audiences, across points of views, across different age groups and genders. And it connects primarily because of a shared pain. So it's something that people can relate to, something that feels relevant, something that brings them together, right? And that's the key element. When you make it personal, when you make it or frame it or present it or weave it in such a fashion that it allows people to relate to what you're saying and what you're doing, then the pitch works. And if you miss any of these elements, then it may be a pitch, but it certainly wouldn't be a great pitch. The first question was, what makes a great pitch? A great pitch is based on a true story that connects across audiences and age groups because of a shared pain. But what do you expect a pitch to do? What do you want a pitch to do? What's the objective? What do you expect to get out of it? So question number 2, what is a pitch supposed to do? A great pitch is supposed to influence, persuade, and convince your audience. Influence, persuade, and convince them to do what? To give you something that they have, something that you want. Now it could be a time slot, it could be a check, it could be a connection, a referral, opening a door, giving you a contract, giving you an order, something that they have and that you want. Now, within this, remember, the focus is not something that they have. So you have to be very sure and very clear about who they is and what is it that they have. And this sort of revolves, this sort of defines the parameters of what is it that you want to influence, persuade, and convince them of. So 2 questions, right? What makes a great pitch and what is a pitch supposed to do? But why should you care? If you're a founder or a startup or a team or an individual, why does good pitch or great pitch or the art of pitching matters to you? Now, within the world of startups and founders, and I've said this again and again multiple times in my lectures and in my classes and my sessions, that one of the biggest reasons why we fail as startups is because we don't understand, because we don't know, we can't comprehend, can't appreciate, or we have challenges with selling. We don't know how to sell. If I were to make a list of all the big reasons why new ventures, new startups, old ventures, old startups and founders fall flat on the face and fail, I think the biggest one in that list would be we don't know how to sell. So that's one. I think the second big one is, even if we know how to sell, we're confused about what is it that we're selling. So we need to sort of take a step back and understand what is it that a customer is buying, and based on what he or she is buying, what is it that we're selling. And then third, even if we understand or have a good sense of these two questions, we can't deliver. We can't deliver because we've sold too much. We've gone out and promised something which is not within our power or reach or understanding, right? So these three, and we put these three key factors together in the introductory sessions of this course when we said that when you look at the voice of a customer, if you want to hear the voice of a customer in a pitch, you're looking at four key drivers. You want to understand what are the primary pain points that define the need on the customer side. What are the demographics? What does this customer look like, behave like, think like, feel like, right? How do we find these customers? Where do we reach them? And then when you combine all three of these together in the context of that specific customer, we end up or get a pitch, right? These four elements. So if you were to simplify this, what you're really saying is your pitch needs to be driven and defined by the perspectives of your customer, their point of views, and the context around that pitch. What's the context? Remember what we said earlier? Influence, persuade, and convinces them, your audience, to give you something that they have and that you want. So the context is what is it that they have and what do you want? Which brings you back to the objective of the pitch. What is a pitch supposed to do? Oh, so all of this is fine and well, right? But what is a pitch supposed to do? Think about it for a second before you move forward. What's it supposed to do? A pitch is supposed to get you to the next meeting. That's it. That's it. You're not there to close $1 million contract. You're not there to finalize your sale. You're not there for the customer to write you a check. You're not there to give him what you want there and then. Remember, the objective of a pitch is to get you to the next meeting. And that's the key lesson. It's a key lesson which is central to the selling process. It emphasizes that a sale is not a one-stop deal. That a pitch is not supposed to go beyond this specific objective, get you to the next meeting. Now, within the context of the next meeting, you have to understand how the selling process works, and we'll spend some time on that a little later. But primarily here, the primary objective of a pitch is to get you to the next meeting, help you survive. So how do you get to the next meeting? You get to the next meeting by establishing credibility. And how do you establish credibility? You establish credibility by answering some very basic, very common questions. So if you're pitching to a potential employee, right? There's, a 10x programmer or developer that you want to hire, and interviews are done, you've made up your mind, you want to make him an offer, you want him to accept that offer, right? What's the question the employee has in his or her mind? And that question is, how do you help me realize my dream? So now think from the point and perspective of an employee. He's sitting on the other side, you've made him an offer, you want him to accept the offer, right? But before you pitch him, before you answer the question, how do you help me realize my dream? You have to take some time out to understand what his dreams are, what the context for that specific individual is, what drives him, right? And that cannot be done by simply making assumptions of, oh, this is a person, this is his profile, this is his background. You actually have to ask him. So what is it that you want out of life? Where do you see yourself in the next few years? How does this help you get where you want to be? And then based on those answers, you have to figure out, is this place the best place for him? And if it isn't, you have to be honest enough to say, you're a great guy, you're a great kid, you have a great profile, you did very well, you're a perfect candidate. But what I'm really concerned about is that I don't think this is the best possible place for you, because this is not going to help you get to where you want to be in the next few years. And you should possibly look elsewhere. And it cuts my heart in two to say this to you, because I'd love to have you as part of our team, but I don't think it would be fair or just to you. Right? That's being honest. So how do you help me realize my dream? How do you help me realize my dream? By asking me, by taking the time to understand what is the want, and then being honest enough to realize and say that, this is a great place for you, this is a terrible place for you. If it's a great place for you, come on board, join us. This is what we can do for you to get you where you want to be. Or if this is a terrible place for you, we'd recommend go look elsewhere. In fact, let me open my Rolodex, let me open my diary, let me call a couple of friends and refer them to you and see, if you could work the same magic that you worked here on that side. Extend this now. You're pitching to a partner or a client. Why should we work together? What's in it for me? That context is important. Not what's in it for you. Here, my name is Jawwad Fareed and I run this specific shop that sells training courses online. And I'd love for us to sell our training courses on your site. Oh, wow. Good, very good, very good, terrific. What's in it for me? What do I get of selling your courses online on my site? Pitching to an end user. So if your customer or your client has bought $1 million software and everything has been done, money has been made, integration is done, systems up and running, but you're not seeing enough traction on the end user side. Why is that? Because the end user is saying, I already have a complicated life. I'm already spending another extra 2 hours working at the end of day to close my task list. Why should I spend another extra hour to understand and work with this new system, which already sort of, complicates my fairly complicated workflow? What's in it for me? How does it simplify my life? How does this product make my life easier? Answer that question. That's the pitch. Pitching to an investor. Is this worthy? So this is very funny. I asked this question again and again. Why do investors invest money in what you're doing, what you're interested in? And a lot of time, the common questions, or common answers I get from my audiences include choices such as, this is going to be a 10-bagger. This is a really interesting idea. This is a great idea. There's a great market. There's a lot of demand. We'll make you a lot of money. We'll go places together. These are all good answers, but they're not the right answer. Because the question I'm asking as an investor is this worthy? And to get the context of, is this worthy, you actually have to take a step back and put on your investor shoes and then think from their perspective and mindset. So if you're a fund manager, if you're on a venture capital fund, and just two partners together, running a couple of $1 million, what's your biggest challenge? Your biggest challenge is that you have committed to your investors that you will treat this money with the appropriate amount of care, that you will ensure that this idea is decent, that the team is capable, and that there is fairly substantial potential for this product, concept, team, founders, or startup in the real world. And that you will put in the relevant amount, the appropriate amount of effort that is required to make this work. Now, we've spent some time in our earlier classes and sessions on the startup cycle, on the founder cycle. What does it take? How long does it take for an idea to go from drawing board to commercial reality? From launch to revenues, from revenues to cash flow positive, from cash flow positive to exit. And I think that window, depending on where you are, which market you're in, how mature your team is, how strong the demand is anywhere between 8 to 12 years. So as an investor, you're basically saying, I'm going to marry this team for the next 8 to 12 years. And if I'm going to marry this team for the next 8 to 12 years, spend a great deal of time on this specific group of individuals, then what are some of my requirements? My first requirement is at least this idea should be in a space that excites me, that interests me, that I care about. Because if you're expecting me to spend 8 to 12 years of my life and my time on this team, on this concept, on this idea, then, it should at least be interesting enough for me to not get bored or for this to feel like a burden or a chore. Because if it feels like that, then it's not going to fly. And so what are the ideas that I care about? I care about ideas that I think are worthy of being solved. So money is, yes, it's an important part of the equation, right? It's a given. So whatever we work on, we are planning on making 2x, 3x, 4x, 5x, 10x return. That is given, right? That's not the prime driver. But within the space of ideas, within that box of choices, where I have a range of 2x to 10x returns, would I work on all ideas? Would I treat all ideas as equal? Or do I have preferences? And what are those preferences linked to? Those preferences are linked, obviously, to spaces that I'm interested in working in. And if I'm not interested in working those spaces, then I don't think I am in a position to allocate or dedicate 8 to 12 years of my life on something that I really don't care about. So again, when you pitch to an investor, a key question is, it's not about the money. Money is given, money will be made. It's about, do I feel, do I care, am I interested in this space? And most importantly, do I feel if the problem that you're attacking, that you're trying to solve, is worthy enough of being solved? Next, pitching to a family. So a large part of your ability to survive and to function and to give this the best of your efforts is linked to the fact how much support or love or understanding do you get from your loved ones. And your loved ones have a very simple question. They don't care about money. They care about it to a certain extent, so the bills are being paid. They care about your health. They care about your goodwill. But they also care about, what this will do to the relationship, to the family as a unit. And their big question, their primary question is not, why is this worthy? Or how does this make my life easier? Or why should you work on this? Or why this drives you? Their primary question is, why should we suffer? And there is going to be a great deal of pain and suffering in the next 8 to 12 years because there will be a number of sacrifices made on all parts, not just on your part, but on the family's part. And the question there is, why should we suffer? And that's the question you have to answer. And then how long will that suffering last? Are we just talking about a year, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, 6 years, 10 years? How does that equation work? So be honest. If you're not honest, the challenge is that, right at the point where you just need that little bit of extra support to make things work, you will find that that support has disappeared. You'll also find that without that support, you will not be able to give in that little bit of extra support that is required to make this work. Pitching to gatekeepers, people who are important enough to help you get to the next stage, open doors, connect, influence, persuade. Why should they help you? Why should they let you in? What's their primary fear? Their primary fear is that, if they pass your name onwards to a referred contact and you go in front of them with their name behind your back and you blow up, you embarrass them, look like a fool. Not just you look like a fool, you make them look like a fool, right? You make them look stupid. I've had multiple instances where I've passed on candidates to friends in my network, and the call that I really, really dread is, who did you send over? What were you thinking? Is that the best that you could do? These are the worst possible references or feedback on a reference that I could expect to get. And my big thing right now over the last, and my big fear right now is not so much a question of that you'd look like a fool, it's more like you'll make me look like a fool, right? So how do I answer that? Why should I let you in? And how do I know that you're not going to make me look stupid? Ajira. So common questions, common answers. Framing, context, choices of how you present your answer to these questions are fairly important. But if you don't know the question that is being asked, then you can't answer it. And that's the biggest pitfall that we see in pitching failures. We assume that we have all the answers. We assume that we understand our audience. We assume that we know what drives them. We don't validate it. Very, very key, very, very big. So the biggest element that's important in driving this context is you have to validate your underlying assumptions, and then based on those underlying assumptions and that underlying context, craft a pitch which is relevant, which is specific to your audience. If you can do that, you're already ahead of the game. If you can't do that, you won't even get off the starting blocks. If I were to summarize the context of the questions that you looked at in the previous slide, we're essentially saying, me, right? What's in it for me? Why? Why now? How? What's your special magic sauce? Do you have any validation? Do you have any customers? How do you know what you're thinking is correct or true? What about your commitment? Are you in it for the short haul or the long haul? Are you going to flip this or you make this work till its end? And your numbers, are they viable, scalable, or defendable, right? These are all dimension or facets of the answers you're looking for. And it's as long as you prepared with all of them, depending on how your audience reacts and how they pose questions, you may need one or more of them in some combination. What does a pitch do? A perfect pitch gets you to the next meeting, right? How many meetings are there in total? So, how long does the sales cycle run? How many meetings does it take to get you what you need to do and to get where you want to be? So if you look at the sales cycle here in front of us is essentially 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. It's a 6-step cycle. And if I break down the cycle, you will see the first one is contact, which is engage the customer, ask questions, get context, and get to the next meeting, right? So my name is Jawwad Ahmed Fareed. I run financetrainingcourse.com. Financetrainingcourse.com is an online training platform for the finance world, right? That's my default standard pitch, right? But is that what I start off with? How do I engage the customer? My name is Jawwad Ahmed Fareed. I run financetrainingcourse.com. We run or sell online training courses for the corporate finance world. Where's the engagement? Where's the context? Is that enough for me to get to the next meeting? No. So, hi, my name is Jawwad Ahmed Fareed. I run financetrainingcourse.com. But before I tell you about what we do, I'd really like to understand, in the current context of coronavirus and the shift to online classes, how are you guys faring? What are you guys doing? Where are your biggest problems? Where are your biggest training needs? Do you see the difference? So engaging the customer does not mean that you go forth and essentially do a dump of what you think he or she is waiting or willing to hear. It means that you need to sit down and ask him what's happening in your life and how can I help. That's first. Now, if you've done a good enough job of engagement and of getting the context, in the next step is you say, all right, this is really, really good to know. So what I'd like to do is I'd like to send over a few ideas or share a few ideas, and then you can come back and tell me which one of these works the best for you, and then take it from there, right? So that becomes your first call, to which the pitch has helped you reach. In that next meeting, you get more context. You come back with 6 or 7 or 8 different variations, and you ask, within the areas of training, based on our last conversations, I understand that you're looking for specific courses on fast track compliance training for your fresh associates and relationship managers. Okay, that's 1. You would want this delivered online. That's 2. You would want this delivered in short bite-sized pieces, which is 3. You would like to get some assessment done so that you can track progress and comprehension, which is 4. And you'd like to get this all wrapped up within the span of not more than an hour of exposure for the person who's taking the course, which is 6. So can we do all of these? Yes. Here's a sample. Let's start. So objective of the meeting gives you more context, right? Now, when you say here's a sample, let's start, what does that mean? That means you're sort of trying to push to a close, right? But that's not the objective of the meeting of the first call. The objective of the meeting of the first call is to get more context, right? So rather than saying, let's start, it would be best to say, given a last conversation, we understood you needed A, B, C, D, E, F, G, 8 specific points. We put together something that represents those 7 points, and we wanted to show it to you to get a sense of whether this fits in with what you wanted or need at this specific stage. So that gets you to the third meeting, which is solution design. And the objective of solution design is you presenting your understanding of the approach you're going to take to solve the problem. So the second meeting, you said you got 8 points. I put something together. Which one of these are the most interesting, most relevant? Okay, these 4, perfect. I'm going to come back to you and do a third presentation. And in that third presentation, I'm going to show you how this model works, and you can tell me whether this model works for you or not, right? So that's test, model, validate, verify your approach and your design for the solution that you present in front of them. And then once these 3 meetings are done, then you've gotten the context, you've presented a few solution choices, you've gotten consensus on one that works for the customer. In the 4th meeting is the ask, right? So your ask is now what? Your ask is now saying, You spend some time with you. We understand you have 8 specific points. We've presented 2 or 3 solution choices for those 8 specific points. And within those 8 specific points, the key things that have come out is whatever we do has to be done within an hour. Whatever you do has to be done in short bite-sized pieces. Whatever you do has to come up with a self-assessment approach that tracks progress of a student in terms of comprehension, retention, and score, because that's what the regulator is going to look for when they come in for your licensing review. Correct? These 4. Based on these 4, here's a solution that covers these specific requirements based on needs that you shared earlier. Right? Now comes the ask. Now the ask comes in many shapes and form. Right? But the ask is again linked to what do you want of this context. Do you want them to sign in as a beta customer? Do you want to sign them in as a regular customer? Do you want them to start next month, next week, next year? Do you want them to start with 1 courses or 8 courses or 10 courses? Do you want them to start with small trial group? Do you want them to roll it across the entire bank? These are all choices, and these choices determine the ask that you want specifically for this specific customer. But the best asks are the asks where you frame the ask in such a fashion that the pitch is subverted. Rather than you saying that let's start tomorrow, the customer says, this is fine and well, this is great, this is perfect, this is what we want. When can you start? And subverting the pitch is possibly the best indicator of how effective, how convincing you were with respect to your approach, your model, and your design. So, let's say you have been successful in subverting the pitch and the client says, let's start tomorrow. Then what comes? Then comes the trial piece. So within the last 3 stages of your pitching strategy are 3 steps: ask, trial, and close. So ask is let's start, or let's sign, or let's begin. Trial is I want to make sure that we don't fall flat on our face. You don't fall flat on your face. We don't fall flat on our face, right? And your end users are happy with the product and the solution that has been presented in front of them. So that, both in terms of acceptance, in terms of engagement, in terms of usability, in terms of traction, we don't walk into any minefields. So the trial phase is another round of validation to ensure that whatever design we've come up with works for these specific customers, that there are no challenges. And then finally is the close, where you say, okay, we're good, we're done, let's sign, let's exchange the payments, let's move on, and let's start work. So 6 steps: contact, first call, solution design, ask, trial, close. It'll take you 6, sometimes 7, sometimes 8 steps to close a deal. Great pitches understand this. Great pitches are structured in an 8-step or in an 8-stage format. You're not in a rush to close. You're not pushing the customer to sign. You're not asking to send over the check. You simply want to move forward with the natural progression of things in the pitching world, which is essentially a 6-step process. There's no rush. There's no con. There's no scam. Take as much time as you need to make sure that this is the right thing that you need. And when you're sure, we can start. And in this process, in this 8-step process, you're doing everything in your power to make sure that you send over the correct signals to the customer, to the client, to the audience, to ensure that they're happy, that they are convinced that they made the right choice, that each additional data point they receive from your side gives them an indication that this is the right team that they're planning on working with. If I were to summarize, you've got those 4 steps in the beginning, and then you've got 3 steps towards the end: ask, trial, and close, right? So you must have an ask. Without an ask, there is no pitch. No ask, no pitch. And you have to be clear about your ask. Your ask has to be reasonable. Your ask has to be something which is doable, which is possible. And your ask will change depending on where you are. Yeah. In your first pitch meeting, the ask is, let's get to the next meeting. In your second, could you share some context? In your third, which is solution design, here are the possible approaches. Which one of these works best for you? In your fourth, which is the ask meeting, right? The ask is finally, okay, how do we move forward? What are the next steps? How does contracting work? Trial. The objective of the trial is to ensure that the biggest fear of a buyer is addressed. What is the biggest fear of a buyer? It's a stupidity check. 2 months down the road, when this thing blows up in my face, will I look stupid? That's the biggest fear of a buy, right? So if I buy from IBM, if I buy from Oracle, if I buy from Reuters, I will not look stupid because the world buys from these guys. But if I buy it from this itsy bitsy teeny weeny startup out of this place that nobody's ever heard of, and that blows up, then I will certainly look stupid. So how do I avoid the stupidity check? How do I ensure that A, this doesn't blow up, and B, I don't look stupid? And that's the biggest fear. How do you address that? You address that by doing a short trial. So the ask is, okay, so everything's all fine and well, good. Next steps, how do you move forward? What can we do to increase your comfort level even further, that this is real, that this is not fake, this is not make-believe? And then close is the final step in the pitching process. You follow up, you address and identify conflicts, you resolve those conflicts, you address, identify contention, you resolve those contention. And you basically get to a final stage, a final point where things come together enough to a point where there is no longer any reason for them to hold back or say no. Ask, trial, and close. Remember, go back, contact, first call, solution design. These are your first 3 steps in your pitching stage. And this is specifically within the world of technology solutions and technology sales. There are some variations if you're not doing technologies, but the structure is still the same. Contact, first call, solution design, and then ask, trial, and close. No ask, no pitch. So the final pitch, if you were to put all of this together, shows me who am I selling to? Shows me what? What am I selling? Shows me the motivation. Why are my customers buying? Quantifies it. How much? How big? When? Commits that your buyer will not look stupid, right? Put these 3 or 4 or 5 filters on the pitches you've made and see if you clearly answer these 5 questions. Who are you selling to? What are you selling? What's their motivation? What's the quantification? And how do you ensure that your buyer will not look stupid? If you get these 5 questions right, there's a reasonable chance that you're on your way to putting together a pitch that will most likely work. So remember, 6 steps between initial contact and your final pitch. Remember, 6 steps between your initial contact and your final pitch. Remember, don't be in a rush. Take it slow. It's going to take time. There's a natural progression. If you push, if you rush, there's a reasonable chance you'll scare off your customer 1 step at a time. And stay honest. As honest as the eyes you saw earlier of the old man on the hill and the gentleman here. Honesty. And honesty reflects. Let me tell you this very, very clearly. Over the years, 30 years of working in the corporate world, I can tell within the first 30 seconds if I'm dealing with an honest salesman or one who's misrepresenting. It's not about being slick. It's not about being fast. It's not about being presentable. It's honesty is something that leaks. It's an aura that you carry around yourself. And as long as you're honest, as long as you're truthful, you will find that your pitches will go very well. And as long as you sort of misrepresent or are dishonest, and honesty is not just a question of misrepresenting, it's just a question of not understanding what's driving the process, what's driving the transaction. Stay honest, be honest. Okay, so now, what defines honesty? Is it just an ambiguous high-level term, or is there more to it? Can you actually be more clear or tangible or specific? To some extent, yes. So honesty is a function of 3 or 4 things, right? First is curiosity and empathy. How do things work? And why would people want things in a certain way? What drives them? Understanding them. And then experimenting with different variations to come up with a mix that works well for them. Not for you, for them, right? Honesty is about focusing on one small thing. Don't try to save the world. Just save one person or one life or one community at a time. Make it work. There are always challenges with approaches that you try, but figure out how to make it work. Make it work what? That one small thing you've picked up above. Reduce the cost of trial. Show me as a customer, as a buyer, what is possible, and establish clear, credible value. So if you can do these 3 things, curiosity, understanding how things work, empathy with me as a customer, focusing on one small thing, just one small thing, not a lot, just one small thing, making that one small thing work, reducing the cost of trial, showing me what's possible, and establishing credible value, To a large extent, you're honest. But if you haven't done any of these, if you haven't done 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, then it's difficult for me to feel that you're being honest, that you're putting in the effort to make it work. And if you can't do that, then there are challenges and issues. All right. So what do you need for a pitch? What are the key components of a pitch? Lots of moving boxes. And depending on your design, your approach, your model, the way you're trying to do things, you will find out that some of these work well and some of these don't work well. So a great pitch generally starts with a hook. A hook is something that grabs your audience by the collar, keeps them interested. It's your rooftop chase. Pick the first 10 minutes of any James Bond 007 film, and you'll find that it really grabs you by the collar, sets the context for you to sit down and watch the rest of the movie. And some of them have turned out to be real disasters after the first 10 minutes are done, but those first 10 minutes are really worth watching. The connector. What's the emotional connection? Remember, this is not about money. Why are we doing this? And who are we doing it for? The problem we solve. What's your magic sauce? How do we change the world? How will we change the world even more? How do we scale? And this is for investors and partners and employees. How do we make money? Dollars in, dollars out. What's the business model? And where is this going? Are we just going to the moon or to the Mars? Is there a grander vision beyond that, right? Now, these are all moving boxes. And that's the reason I use the word moving boxes. You may use one or more of them. But it all starts with some combination of the elements that you see. Your hook. How do you grab them by the collars? How do you sort of jug them out of the seats? The connectors. And this is essentially the emotional connection. Why is it worthy? Problem that you're solving. How does this change the world now and in the future? How do you scale? How do you make it work? And where is this going? So in terms of priorities, if you take what we just discussed earlier, your pitch also needs to have some meat. And this meat may come out depending on where you are in your cycle. Remember the 6 steps? In the first few, you're not digging deep enough for the customer or the partner or the investor or the employee to ask deeper questions. But at some point in time, you have to come back and you say, okay, what are the assumptions that we've made? What are the milestones we need to hit? What can we do within our current resources? And, how far will we go with what we have right now? Where do we start? How do we start? So credibility is a function of how well thought out, how much time have you spent on taking this idea to the next stage. Part of that is your roadmap. Part of that is your ability to figure out, okay, how many customers do I need or want? And part of this is your numbers. If you've done this groundwork, if you've done this homework, if this question comes up and pops up and you can answer this in a sensible, credible fashion, a large part of the pain you're likely to see in the future will go away. If you haven't, you will fall flat on your face. So far in the last hour or so, we spent a fair bit of time on what is the pitch about. Now let's take a look at what is the pitch not about. What are some of the things that do not belong in the pitch? So the pitch is not about you. I don't care. To some extent I do, but I really don't care about you. When I want to hear about you, I will ask. When I ask, you can answer that question, but you can't start off with me. My name is Jawwad Ahmed Fareed. I have an MBA from Columbia Business School. I'm a fellow study of actuaries. I have a bachelor's in computer science. I went to BVS Parsi High School. I went to Government College Gulshan Iqbal. I live in Gulshan Iqbal. I drive 15 minutes from my home to my office. My office is at Hill Park. No. These are all irrelevant bits. And so yes, I went towards the extreme, but even if you sort of polished it up, cleaned it up, made it nicer, made it flashier, made it interesting, no. Tell me why you're here. Tell me what is the problem you're solving. Tell me how does it help me. And then if I'm interested enough, to ask, I will ask, Jawad, all of this is fine and well, but what is there in your background that makes it possible for you to do this? What's there in your background that makes it possible for you to do this better than anybody else in the space? When I ask that question, then yes, you can come back and tell me, I did my coursework with Mark Brody. And as part of that coursework, we looked at approaches and models and designs that were cutting edge at that point in time. And I was able to pick some elements from there and bring them to my models that I now build and sell. So that's a relevant answer when it's asked and posed. But till that question is asked and posed, please do not start or spend too much time about your own background in history. The pitch is not about you. It's about the customer and the customer's pain. 1. 2. It's also not about the product or its features. I want to go from point A to point B as a customer. Point A is where I am right now. Point B is where I need to be. In between point A and point B, there's a big, huge, giant wall. So I'm interested in your product to the extent that it helps me understand how you'll help me to get from point A to point B. How will you sort of drill a hole in the wall or demolish the wall or help me walk through the wall. I'm interested in your product to this extent. How does your product help me solve this problem? But I don't care whether your product's made in Oracle or SQL, whether it has 250 screens and 675 reports or has 10 million lines of code. No. I'm not interested in your product or its features. All I'm interested in, what use case of this product helps me get from point A to point B as a customer. So remember, not about you, not about the product. Not about you, not about the product. This is a common challenge and mistake. Talk to me about my challenges, my problems, my solutions. And then mention, if you're looking for this specific solution or feature or design, then this is where our product comes in. But that's it. You don't start off with you or your product. It's about what your customer wants. And, it sounds basic, simple, common sense. Let's talk about what your customer wants. Well, you'll be surprised by the mistakes that we make. Do you really know who your customer is? And do you really know what his or her pain is about? Do you really know what he or she wants? Have you validated those assumptions and needs and wants? How do you know for a fact? This is a great example, right? This is my friend Mr. Amjad, who is an athlete. He is a distance runner, very well respected, very well talented, very hard-working distance runner. What is he trying to do? So you can see, right? If you look at the background, there's a stadium at the back. There's a tartan track in the bottom. He's wearing the right kit. He's wearing the flag. He has a name title. He's really putting in an effort. You can look at how hard he's clenching his fist to get a sense of how hard he's trying. You can see the anguish and the pain on his face. What is Amjad trying to do? What are you trying to achieve? Now, most of you who weren't there and haven't seen or known or worked with Amjad before would simply say, Amjad's trying to come first. He's trying to win the race. And remember, what's the objective? What are we trying to do? We're trying to say, do we really understand what our customer needs or wants? So what is Amjad trying to do? Is Amjad trying to win? Come first or second? What is Amjad trying to do? So yes, you're right. This is a race. This is an event. You can see on the top, right at the top, it says finish line. So that's the end. Right in front of Amjad is the finishing line. You can see that where it says, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So Amjad's about to win. But is he? Is Amjad really winning? Is that all Amjad wants to do? That's why he's trying so hard. Come first or second? All Amjad's trying to do here, and that's the context that we don't see, is come third. The first and the second slot are already taken. All Amjad wants to do, all Amjad's trying to do at this point in time is to finish third. Not to finish fourth, but to actually make it to the podium and stand at the slot or the position of number 3. That's it. That's all Amjad's trying to do. Wants to finish third. Nothing else, nothing more. So when we looked here, our assumption was Amjad wants to win. He's trying to finish. He's trying to win first. But Amjad doesn't want to be first. Amjad's happy with being third because at this point in time, that's all he can get his hands on. If you validated the assumptions on your customers' needs and wants, then share it as part of an engaging storyboard. That's what makes a great pitch. Validated assumptions and pain points, engaging storyboard. It's about selling without really selling. Remember, subverting the pitch. You're not selling, you're solving problems. And as part of solving problems, you're saying you have multiple choices. This is one possible path. Your call, your decision, whether this makes sense to you or not. Let him or her make that call. So how do you sell without really selling? You sell without really selling by focusing on the conversation and the relationship, not on the transaction. And I've said this before again and again. Transactional selling, relationship selling, high value selling always focuses on ensuring that you're adding value, that you're solving problems, that you're making a difference in the customer's life. Without this mindset, if you're trying too hard to sell, you'll scare the customer off. So your focus is not the transaction. Your focus is the relationship. Your focus is solving problems, providing solutions, not the transaction. So if you were to summarize everything we've spoken about so far, what we're basically saying is great pitches tell great stories about customers, their pain, and how your ideas, your approaches, your models, your solutions, your suggestions, your designs resolve that pain. Great stories, customers, great stories about customers and their pain and how your ideas resolve that pain. That's what great pitches do. That's what you want to do. So is it that simple? Is it that easy? And as we've seen so far in our interaction and engagement in this course, no. It's hard, it's difficult, it's awkward. Are there any rules that can help us tell or formulate or form great stories? How do we tell great stories? Where do we start? What are the rules for telling great stories? So there are 5 drivers of telling great stories, of stories that engage, right? That sort of keep your customers pinned to their seats, hanging on to every single word that you want to share with them. The first is engagement. The second is a plot. The third is my rule that I call respect my intelligence, and we'll spend some more time on that. Fourth is get to the point, and the fifth is roadmap to credibility. These are the 5 key drivers, the 5 key elements that you want to focus on. So I've got 5 of them right here in front of you. Engagement, plot, respect my intelligence, get to the point, roadmap to credibility. Let's take a deeper look what these 5 rules are. So engagement is essentially driven by the amount of audience research you've done, which allows you to connect. If you understand who you're speaking to, what drives them, what they care about, what's the context that they're looking at this specific conversation on, that's part of audience research. Who are the people you're speaking to? The second is visuals, good images. Third is copy, your choice of words. The fourth is relevance. Based on your audience research, have you come up with something that they can relate to and work with? The fifth and final one is connection. So great engagement is a function of these 5 components. Do your research, pick up great visuals, find great copy, write great copy, make sure it's relevant, and ensure that in terms of your overall construction, your primary focus, your primary emphasis is on establishing and making a connection with your audience. That's the key part. That's one. What do you have in front of you? Can you guess? If you're a sushi fan, this is a sushi burger. The patty in the middle, in the center, is made of kani, and then you've got, two sort of buns made of the same rice that we use in your regular sushi rolls, and then there's more kani on top and some fish eggs, right? And it's served with a spicy mayo sauce. Sushi meets burger, gives you sushi burger. Now, this is not a great image, but it's a decent image. It highlights the key central features of the sushi burger. And who would this be of interest to? To people who like eating sushis, who are partial to Japanese/fusion food and are open to experimentation, right? So would you put the sushi burger in front of everybody else? No. Would my parents like to see a sushi burger? No. Who would be the right audience to present this visual? Maybe young men and women who've sort of experimented with, thought about, or heard about sushi and may want to try it at some point in time. Followed by a great visual, followed by some connection or story that sort of puts the right word together, mixed with great copy, and I've got your attention. Sushi meets burger gives you sushi burger, right? Visuals. Second element, plot. So who's the hero and who's the villain in your story? Remember what the pitch is not about? The pitch is not about you, not about your product, not about your features. It's about the customer and the pain. Your customer is primarily interested in going from point A to point B. Point A is where he is right now. Point B is where he wants to be. In the middle is a big, huge wall, which is stopping him, which is a big, giant obstacle in his path. What is he interested in? He's interested in how you help, how you may perhaps help him get across or through that obstacle. So the hero in your story is the customer. It's not you, it's not the product, it's not the features. It is all about the customer. Who's the villain? Villain is the pain. So where are you? You're in the background. Where's your product? Also in the background. All you're doing is helping the customer fulfill his character arc that allows him to go and get from point A to point B. Now, what does he or she needs to get to point A and B? That's part of the story. How do we help? Part of the story. If this was Mission Impossible, how would this play out? Part of your pitch. That's the plot. So the key point, the key challenge here is the objective of a plot as a device is to keep interest and engagement at a high level. If you were to shoot Mission Impossible with your customer at its center, how would that work? What would the script look like? How would you shoot it? How would the story evolve? How would you present it? What angles would you take? How would you engage your audience? That's the objective of the plot as a device. So think in terms of the segments you're producing. Look at them and see, okay, if I were to do this on a Mission Impossible theme, how would I play with this? How would I make it interesting? How would I make it engaging? If you don't like Mission Impossible and you're happy with 007, that's also fine. If I were to shoot this as a 007 movie, how would this work? What would Daniel Craig be chasing in the beginning? Who would he be shooting in the end? What would happen in the middle? That's the plot. Figure out the plot. But remember, not about you, not about the product, not about the features. It's all about the customer and his pain and the journey he undertakes to address and resolve that pain using your product, concept, idea, feature in it. All right? So that's the plot. That's number 2. Number 3, respect my intelligence. Please do not make empty claims. You'd be surprised how frequently I see this happen. People go out and make lofty claims, and my first reaction when I hear those claims is what? My first reaction is, do you think I'm an idiot? So that's what respect my intelligence means. At no point in time should your presentation, should your pitch wander or get lost in areas where my first natural reaction as a customer or as a member of your audience is, do you think I'm an idiot? So it's the idiot check. Respect my intelligence. Do not make me ask this question. Do you think I'm an idiot? Now, how does it happen? As I said, empty claims. I'm going to fly to Mars. We're going to capture 2% of the market share. We've never sold anything in our life, but we're going to capture, 90% of the market share in the next 3 months. We have no money in the bank, but we're going to launch a product. We have no idea where to start, but we'll launch a product. We have no idea how to start, but we're going to capture the entire market share. We have no idea where to start, but we're going to do X. So stop with empty claims. 1. 2, everybody's a customer. Anybody with this pain is a customer. Be specific. When you get specific, you make it possible for me. You help me visualize both the customer and the use case. If you're not specific, if you're just talking in generics, if you're just making general statements, I can't see that. I can't visualize. I can't see the transaction, the customer, or your product. So make it specific. And despite not making empty claims, despite being specific enough, sometimes, you also have to do a check. And that check is, what we're saying, is that a daydream or a reality? Is it likely to happen or not happen? So, my simple rule, ground check when I work in my market is, it takes a team of about 5 to 6 people to get a product out to market in the space that I work in. And the cost for that is about $150,000 per year. So it takes about a year to get a product to market, to a point where the market accepts it, starts to work with it, gets some traction. It takes about $150,000 to make it work. So a year and $150,000 is my basic specific reality check. So if somebody comes to me and says, I can do it in $10,000 and do it in 3 months, what's my reaction? It's a daydream. My reality check over the last 30 years of experience in this space, in this specific geographic location, is it takes $150,000 and a year and 5 people to get a product to market. You can't do it sooner. If you think you can do it sooner, you're daydreaming. That's my natural reaction, right? Respect my intelligence. Now, if you think that you can do it sooner, show me evidence, credible specific factoids, credible specific data points that show that you've done this before and you can do it again. There wasn't an accident, and the parameters that you define by saying this got done are the same parameters that I am using it to define that this gets done. So respecting my intelligence, I think, is the biggest possible turn on or turn off in a pitch. If you don't respect my intelligence, doesn't matter who you are, where you come from, what you do. Once you lose credibility, you've already lost my interest. If you lost my interest, the conversation's over. But if you do respect my intelligence, if you've done your homework, you haven't skipped it, I say, oh, these guys know what they're talking about. And if they know what they're talking about, maybe it's worthwhile for me to hang on for a bit more and hear them out and hear what they have to say. Without that, you don't have a shot. Next, get to the point. So, when you said the pitch is not about you, about your product, about your features, about your introduction, about your history, it's because, tell me why you're here. Tell me what problem you're solving. Tell me how it helps me. Tell me how you do it. So get specific and get to the point as early as quickly as possible. Enough with the chit chat. Enough with laying the groundwork. Tell me, why are you here? What do you want? How does this help me? How does this fit into my grand plan? How does it work? Now, you may actually tell me in the beginning, and you may actually start off very well in the beginning, and then right towards the end, I ask a question. So, this is a great pitch. I love everything you've said and done, but I have a question. Could you please answer it? And I ask that question. How much does it cost? Answer the question. Don't give me a roundabout answer. No. Answer how much does it cost? Answer the question. How does it work? Answer the question. How is it different from the competition? Answer the question. What gives you, what makes it possible for you to solve this problem in this specific fashion? Answer the question. To answer the question, it's important that you hear the question, you understand what is being asked. And if you're not sure about what is being asked, here's a simple trick. Here's a simple trick. Ask. So let me understand this. What you're asking me to answer is this. Confirm. And then once you've answered it, ask, did I answer your question? Two simple tricks. Rephrase the question and say, so let me get this right. You're asking me to answer A. Yes? Great. Here's the answer. Now, you've answered the question. Did I answer your question? Two simple tricks. Make sure that you understand the context in which the question is being asked. Once you've confirmed the context, answer the question, and then close by asking, did I answer your question? Two things make a huge difference in your level of engagement, in the level of satisfaction that the person on the other side has with your interaction and engagement with him or her, and the chances and the possibility that he or she will most likely become your possible supporter. And this is an interesting mix. In different cultures, questions play a different role. But in a lot of sales-driven cultures, the person who's asking the question is your best friend. The person who's not asking the questions is not your best friend. Because the person who's asking the question is asking the question because he thinks it's something which is relevant, which will hopefully help the conversation move forward. The person who's not asking the question is not asking the question in front of you because he doesn't want you to answer them. He will ask those questions after you've left the room when there is nobody there to answer them. So remember, the person in the room who's asking the question is not an idiot, is not an irritant, is not trying to be difficult. This is a person who's your friend who's trying to ask a question that he thinks has a relevance on the current discussion and will help the conversation move forward. The person who's not asking the question is the person who's going to ask those questions once you've left the room when there is nobody to answer the question. And questions that will kill the conversation. 3. Within the get to the point, why is this worthy? Why should this be solved? Why is it relevant? Why is it of interest? 4. What are the key assumptions you've made and how are you testing them? Get to the point. Get to the point as early, as quickly as possible. You don't have a lot of time. Make sure whatever time you have, you make it count. Credibility we spoke about earlier, right? Multiple times. Roadmap, path, customers, prospect lists, numbers, and growth. If they're relevant, if they're being asked for, if they need to be presented, present them. If they're not, figure out some way of bringing them into your conversation at a high level so that they know that you've done your homework and you prepared for it. So in the end, I think it boils down to this simple statement. Pitch is a great way of sharing your dreams with the world. But you have to share them in a fashion that the world begins to care about your dreams and has an interest in ensuring that you are able to realize those dreams. A boring pitch turns off the world. A boring pitch would make the world switch to different dreamers or to different channels. Pitching is a great way of sharing your dreams with the world, of making the world care, of pulling in the world to help you reach your dreams. Now, if your pitch is interesting, engaging, if the pitch makes the world care, there's a reasonable chance that the world will help get you where you need to be. But if it's not, there's also a good chance that the world will switch the channel and move on. So, what are the challenges? One is when the world looks at your dreams, can you deliver your dreams? Does the world believe that? Do you believe that yourself? And a lot of that comes down to, doing your homework, being specific, looking at the plot line that we followed earlier and the elements that we've discussed so far in this session. So 3 simple rules Help the world see what you see through your eyes. Give them a reason to believe, and don't hold your breath. Don't hold your breath. So if I were to bring this all together, I think what we're really saying is a pitch is a great medium, great platform for you to share your dreams with the world. But you have to do it in such a fashion that the world remains engaged, remains interested enough for the world to pitch in to help you get to where you need to be, right? And then if you were to take this next step forward, what are some of the common questions that the world asks? A great dream, I understand it, beautiful dream, but can you deliver on it? Do we, the world, believe that? And do you believe this yourself? So 3 simple rules to sort of get the world on your side. The first is, show it through your eyes. Let them see what you see from their perspective and their point of view. Let them see that you're a believer. But don't hold the breath. Don't hold your breath for the world to take out its checkbook and sign it. You'll be surprised where your best funding sources come from. So now, after doing all of this, close your eyes, visualize your customers using your product. What do they look like? Close your eyes, visualize your customers using your products. What does it look like? You've all met Maruf multiple times now in this course. What does it look like? Remember your first reaction when you met Maruf, and remember the profile that you built for Maruf, and then compare that profile with the profile Maruf actually has. Understand the voice of the customer. What are the primary pain points that drive this customer? What are the primary pain points that are driving this current conversations? What defines this customer? Where do you find him? How do you engage him? What are the buttons you need to press? Wrapping up, I want to speak a bit about how do you move forward? What are the things that you now need to do quickly, right? In the time that we have left in this term. So the first is your pitch. Your pitch is a function of your customer persona. Most of you have put something together. Customer persona gets you to the pain point for that customer, where he or she needs to be or wants to be. Your product, the use case of your product, validation of your assumptions, numbers, and roadmap. That's one part of the pitch, right? So in the pitch, you move on to idea development, which is assumptions, validation, building, testing, rollout, feedback, and repeat. And this is a 10, 15, 20-day cycle. Third element is you put together a storyboard from your pitch. You take out some snippets from your development. You shoot, you edit, cut, screen, feedback, and promote. Fourth is your traffic, which is the social platform, your community building, audience selection, priming your launch, and then actually launching. So 4 steps: pitching, idea development, video, and traffic. And in terms of timelines, you basically have 4 weeks, right? You've done a first pass, PowerPoint storyboard, you've got an idea development, wireframe, prototype, marketing collateral, you've got a video, storyboard, script, snapshots, and you have a traffic plan. How does I get the world on board? How does the world sees what I have? How do I get the world to pitch in and help? So in terms of recommended reading, there's a fair bit of stuff that you could possibly look at that will help. Here are the keywords or tag words, and there are multiple sources. Look at Quora, look at Medium, do basic searches outside, focus on material on pitching, on what makes videos go viral, on community building, on growth hacking, on customer personas, and customer validation. There is a fair bit of reading material in the curriculum. If you haven't opened the curriculum, I'd recommend that you open the curriculum, take a look at what's there, go through those reading elements and reading ideas, and see where that takes you. Questions, queries, problems, challenges, feel free to ping me on the email address. Don't be a stranger. This is a tough course. This is a tough ask. There's a fair bit of work that needs to be done. I may not be able to get back to you in time always, but I'll certainly try and get back to you. If I don't hear back from me once, feel free to send me a reminder. All right. See you next week. Thank you. Bye-bye.